This is Euronews Now. I'm Helena Humphrey, and here are your top stories. The war effort in Ukraine was front and centre of EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen's State of the Union address in Strasbourg. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky vows that normal life will return to recently liberated areas as soon as possible after a stunning counter-offensive. And the coffin carrying Queen Elizabeth II returns for a final night at Buckingham Palace before lying in state ahead of next week's funeral at Westminster Abbey in London. The war in Ukraine was front and centre of Ursula von der Leyen's State of the Union speech, attended by guest of honour Ukrainian First Lady Olena Zelenska. Well, MEPs applauded when von der Leyen said that Ukraine and the EU can win the war. And it comes at a critical moment for Ukrainian forces who've made significant gains in the east of the country, forcing Russian troops to, in their words, regroup. Well, with me now is Sasha Vakulina, our correspondent. Sasha, of course, you were listening in to that address, and we saw many people dressed in yellow and blue there, of course, paying homage to the Ukrainian flag. But beyond, I guess, what are symbolic gestures, do we have a clearer idea of the EU's policy towards Ukraine going forward?
There's one phrase that describes that policy. This is what Ursula von der Leyen said, quoting her: "Europe's solidarity with Ukraine will remain unshakable," she said, also saying that today she is going to visit Kyiv. She is going to Ukraine, indeed, to have another meeting with Volodymyr Zelensky, the president there. The big message here is the total solidarity in all senses. This is solidarity when it comes to the financial help, all the aid that the European Union is providing for Ukraine. That also comes with military solidarity, and of course that comes with some economic solidarity as well, because they also announced that the importance of the connection to the EU electricity grid when it comes to Ukraine to help the country go through these troubled times. Also bringing Ukraine into the EU free roaming area, and this is something she said she will be discussing with Zelensky, and suspension of input duties when Ukrainian exports to the European Union. So this solidarity really goes on different fronts.
So lots of detail, in fact, there. It also comes at a hugely important moment for Ukraine, of course, especially the troops, because they've made significant gains, specifically in that counter-offensive in the east. But Sasha, I want to ask you, can we describe this as a turning point?
I think the turning point has already happened there when it comes to the war in Ukraine, because this is what we have been seeing indeed, with the counter-offensive moving in different directions. This is, of course, as you said, when it comes to the region of Kharkiv, northeast of Ukraine. And according to Reuters, the front line in eastern Ukraine is approaching the borders of the territory claimed by the self-proclaimed so-called Luhansk People's Republic, which means Ukrainian forces are not stopping around Kharkiv. They are trying to push forward, and they're now trying to go east, going towards Donbass, to those territories that have been under control of the separatists, Moscow-backed separatists, since 2014 already. And of course there is the counter-offensive that is happening in the south of Ukraine, in Kherson. There is less information about that one, but it's on, and the Ukrainian forces are pushing very hard there.
All right, as you say, a significant moment there in this war. Sasha Vakulina reporting for us as ever. Sasha, thank you so much.
With Ukraine and energy dominating Ursula von der Leyen's State of the Union address, Euronews asked the European Commission President about the possibility of a price cap on gas and when consumers could expect to receive the benefits of one.
We should never forget Putin is using gas as a weapon, and therefore we are in this energy crisis. We've done already a lot as a European Union, and this has cushioned a lot of the effects. For example, the joint storage, we are at 84% now. This is very good. And we have diversified away from Russia towards reliable suppliers like Norway or the United States. You can see that in two figures. At the beginning of the war, from the imported gas, 40% was Russian gas. Today we're down to 9%. So there has been a drastic decrease of Russian gas, and we have compensated that by other suppliers. Now, the step we're doing now is giving the member states the financial firepower to targetedly support the vulnerable households and the vulnerable businesses. So this is the next step that is on the table of Council and Parliament right now. And we are discussing, indeed, the work on price caps insofar as that we look at what can we do to lower the gas price. With Russia, a completely unreliable supply the things are clear. But with friends like, for example, our Norwegian friends, it is good. We have started to negotiate and to discuss how we can have the common approach to stable, lower gas prices because they define so much the electricity market. And last but not least, the big reform of the electricity market is the next step to come. We have the experience of an enormous European solidarity. What we see is, for example, that all member states agreed to have a common storage. We wanted to be in October at 80% storage filled. But we're much better because all work together, so that's solidarity. We're at 84% already right now. So that will help us to go through a safe winter. We see an enormous solidarity insofar that the gas that we get now from reliable suppliers like the United States or Norway is flowing where it is needed. And we've all understood that we have worked together in this energy crisis because the more we give as solidarity, the more we have a stable situation within the European Union, and every member state benefits from that.
And is it going to be in time? Because it was the same question. Is it not going to be late?
So now on the table of the Council and the Parliament is the proposal how to give financial firepower to the member states, the governments, so that they can support the vulnerable households and vulnerable businesses. It's round about 140 billion euros that will be invested in that.
The Institute for the Study of War says the Kremlin has acknowledged its defeat in Kharkiv region for the first time since the invasion into Ukraine in February 2022. Before, Moscow never admitted that Russia was defeated around Kyiv and then later the Snake Island, calling it either a gesture of goodwill or prioritizing the so-called liberation of Donbas. Let's take a look at the latest situation on the ground. Now, the Ukrainian counteroffensive is still on the ground and happening all around the region of Kharkiv. This is northeast of Ukraine, and the front line in eastern Ukraine is now approaching the borders of the territory claimed by the self-proclaimed pro-Russian separatists of the so-called Luhansk People's Republic. Now, according to the Ukrainian authorities, there is an assault on the city of Liman, and there could be an advance on Siversk later. Now, according to the self-proclaimed leaders of those territories, Liman remains in their hands, and the situation has now been stabilized in this area of Donbas. There is also counteroffensive still happening in the south of Ukraine, in the region of Kherson, with heavy fighting happening all over the front line of Kherson with the two neighboring regions. You could see it here from the region of Mykolaiv and also from the north towards Kherson. Now, when it comes to the counteroffensive in the south of Ukraine, in the region of Kherson, there might be less information and details of what's been happening on the ground. But Ukrainian authorities are saying the counteroffensive there continues.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and other top officials have visited the reconquered city of Izium. It was one of several key locations seized by Ukrainian forces in a lightning counter-offensive in recent days. Russian troops were pushed out of a huge swath of territory they had occupied since the invasion launched in February.
The view is very shocking, but it's not shock for me because we began to see the same pictures from Bucha, from the first deoccupied territories. So the same, destroyed buildings, killed people, and so what can I say? That is the part of our real history and the part of modern today's Russian nation. It means that with our army, the life come back.
Russia had captured Izium and other large cities through heavy bombardment, and the full impact can now be seen with Ukraine back in control. Russian troops left behind a trail of destruction with reports of extensive looting. There is also evidence emerging of possible war crimes, with the discovery of the remains of murdered civilians in several places, with some allegedly showing signs of torture.
Stay with us, we've got plenty more coming up after a very short break.